I never thought a skewer of meat would make me rich. In fact, I didn't even know it was possible to get rich selling skewers. But life, as I often say now, sitting on the porch of my house overlooking the sea, has a funny way of surprising you, sometimes with a punch to the face, other times with a tight hug and a wide smile. My surprise came with the smell of charcoal, wood smoke, and homemade pepper sauce. I was 45 when it all began. I wasn't old, but I wasn't young either. I'd already passed that phase of chasing impossible dreams, of believing the world owed me something. I'd worked as a hardware store salesman for nearly 20 years, then as a gas delivery man, then as an office assistant at a real estate agency that went bankrupt. My life was made up of jobs that started with promise and ended in layoffs. My wife, Donna Marta, always told me, "You're too good, Zay. But the world doesn't value good people." She said it with affection, but also with a touch of sadness, because she saw, as I did, that we were living on the edge. Sometimes dinner was just rice. Sometimes just beans. And sometimes not even that. It was on one of those nights without meat on the plate that I had the idea. Or rather, Marta did. I was sitting in the kitchen chair, staring at the ceiling, wondering how life could be so unfair, when she placed a plate with 3 skewers on the table, made from leftover meat from the previous day's lunch. She'd cut it into cubes, seasoned it with garlic, coarse salt, a drizzle of olive oil, and a touch of freshly ground black pepper, something she swore made all the difference. She skewered them on bamboo sticks, grilled them on the old barbecue we had in the backyard, and served them with a red onion and lime sauce she invented right there. Eat, Zay. Even if it's just this today? I ate. And I stopped halfway through the first skewer. I looked at her. "Marta, this is too good." She laughed. "It's just leftover meat, Zay." No. It's the seasoning. The touch. I don't know. It has soul. She didn't understand. But I did. In that moment, something inside me lit up. It wasn't just hunger. It was an idea. A spark. A possibility. The next day, I sold my watch, the one my father gave me when I turned 18. A simple gold-plated watch that no longer worked properly, but which I kept out of sentiment. I pawned it and walked out with 200 reis in my pocket. I bought a large styrofoam cooler, 50 bamboo skewers, 2 kilos of cheap sirloin, charcoal, salt, garlic, pepper, lime, and onion. And a notebook. I wrote everything down, how much I spent, how much it yielded, how much I could sell each skewer for. I did the math like a bank executive. Truthfully, I only knew how to add and subtract, but that was my MBA. I set up my stall on a corner near the soccer field where the kids played until late. It was a busy spot on Saturday nights. People leaving bars, couples coming back from the movies, families heading home after the game. I arrived there with my brick barbecue I'd built myself, an old iron grill I bought at a junkyard for 10 reis. I lit the charcoal, waited for it to heat up, and started grilling. My first customer was a skinny 15-year-old boy wearing a Corinthians jersey and a curious look. "How much for the skewer?" 5 reis. He looked at the skewer, then at my face, and said, "That's expensive." I smiled. "Try one. If you don't like it, you don't pay." He hesitated. But he took it, bit into it, and stopped. He stared at me wide-eyed. "Damn, uncle, this is too good." He paid. And took 2 more for his friends. They came. Ate. Came back. Brought more people. In 2 hours, I'd sold all 30 skewers I'd prepared. I left with 150 reis in my pocket. Net profit, 120 reis. More than I earned in 2 days delivering gas. I returned home with shining eyes. Marta was waiting for me at the door, anxious. "Well?" "Sold out." She smiled. "Thank God." "It wasn't God, Marta. It was you. Your seasoning. Your touch. Your hands." She blushed. She'd never heard me talk like that. But that night, I saw in her something I'd forgotten to see: strength. Creativity. Talent. She wasn't just my wife. She was my partner. My cook. My strategist. The following Saturday, I returned with 60 skewers. Sold them all in an hour and a half. By the third Saturday, 100. By the fourth, 200. I started hiring help. Juninho, the neighbor's son, 17 years old, needing money to help at home. I paid him in skewers and 20 reais per night. He was quick, friendly, and learned to grill better than I did. People began to recognize me. Get Zay, the skewer man. Zay's skewers are the best in town. They started coming from other neighborhoods. Someone recorded a video and posted it on TikTok. At the time, I didn't even know what TikTok was. But the video went viral. It showed me turning the skewers with a wooden tongs, the charcoal crackling, the fat dripping, the aroma rising like a promise. The caption read, "The man who turned skewers into art." I laughed when I saw it. Art? I was just trying not to starve. But the video changed everything. The next Saturday there was a line. People waited an hour to eat a 5 reais skewer. I started raising the price to 10. Then to 15. People complained, but kept buying. Because, as they said, it's not just meat, it's an experience. That's when I had my second idea. Or rather, my second phase. I set up a bigger stall. With a canopy, lights, ambient music, a live guitar sometimes, and occasionally I'd sing some old folk songs myself. I hired 2 more assistants. Marta quit her cleaning job and took over the seasonings, sauces, and logistics. She was the brain. I was the muscle. Together we were a machine. In 6 months I'd saved enough to rent a small shop. Tiny, cramped in the city center. I took down the street stall and opened Zay's Skewers, flavor from the soul. I painted the walls red and gold. Put up photos of me grilling, photos of Marta smiling, photos of happy customers. Installed a real charcoal grill with an exhaust fan so the place wouldn't fill with smoke. Hired a cook, a cashier, 2 waiters. And started selling not just skewers, but sides, craft beer, red fruit caipirinhas. People came not just to eat. They came to feel. To remember. To feel at home. I wasn't selling food. I was selling affection. Selling memory. Selling Sunday barbecues, birthday parties, office gatherings, reunions with friends. In 2 years, I opened my second store. Then the third. Then the fourth. I franchised. Taught others to do the same. But with rules, the seasoning had to be identical. The charcoal, eucalyptus wood. The sauce made fresh. The service with a smile and eye contact. No rushing. No neglect. Every customer was treated as if they were the last. By age 50, I had a network of 12 stores. Employed over 200 people. Lived in a big house with a pool, covered barbecue, and a porch where I sat every morning drinking coffee with Marta, watching the sunrise. My children, Pedro and Luana, had stopped being ashamed of their father, the skewer vendor. Now they were proud. Pedro became the network's administrator. Luana, a designer, she created the brand, the logo, the packaging. They were proof that the skewer wasn't just a business. It was a legacy. But life, as I said, has a funny way of surprising you. When I was 55, Marta got sick. A silent cancer, arriving without warning and settling in like an unwelcome guest. She fought. Fought as she'd fought her whole life, with courage, faith, and a smile. But she left. She left a void no skewer in the world could fill. I stopped. Closed the stores for a week. Cried. Prayed. Stayed in bed for days. My children tried to cheer me up. Employees sent messages. Customers left flowers at the store doors. But nothing helped. Marta was the seasoning of my life. Without her, everything tasted bland. Until one day, Juninho, that same Juninho, now manager of the flagship store, came to visit me. Sat on the edge of the bed as if he were my son. Hey, I see you, Zay. Dona Marta wouldn't want this. She loved the skewers. Loved seeing people happy. Loved seeing you happy. I looked at him. She was everything, Juninho. As she still is. Only now she's in the skewer. In the seasoning. In the smell of the wood. In the customer's smile. You can't let this die. I cried again. But this time I cried with hope. I returned. Slowly. First just to take a look. Then to lend a hand. Then to grill. And when I picked up the first skewer, I smelled it. Her smell. The smell of our life. Of our love. Of our struggle. I kept going. For her. For me. For the people who depended on me. For those who loved what we built. At 60, I sold part of the network. Kept 4 stores, the ones I considered the best. The most soulful. I sold the others to an investment group. Made a fortune. More than I ever dreamed. Bought a farm. Planted trees. Raised chickens. Built a garden. And in the backyard, I built a barbecue just like the first one. Only bigger. And every week, I invite friends, former employees, old customers, and throw a barbecue. Free. Just for the joy of seeing people eat, laugh, and share stories. Today, at 72, sitting here on the porch, watching the sea, with a glass of aged cachaca in hand and the sound of wind in the palm trees, I think, how did I get here? It wasn't luck. It wasn't inheritance. It wasn't a diploma. It was hunger. It was courage. It was love. It was a skewer made from leftover meat and lots of care. People ask me, what's the secret, Zay? I always give the same answer, there's no secret. There's care. There's respect. There's passion. If you do anything with soul, with truth, with dedication, the world will find you. Even if it's just a skewer. My grandchildren love coming here. They call me a grandpa skewer. They play at selling skewers on the beach sand. And I teach them, grill slowly. The charcoal must be just right. The seasoning generous. The smile mandatory. They laugh. And I laugh with them. Because I know that when I'm gone, the skewer will live on. Not because it's a business. But because it's a story. A story of simple people who didn't give up. Of love that became seasoning. Of hunger that became abundance. Of skewers that became legacy. Sometimes, at night, when the sky is full of stars and the sea is calm, I smell the burning wood. I smell the browning garlic. I smell her, Marta. And I whisper, thank you, my love. For everything. For every skewer. For every laugh. For every tear. For every day. And the wind carries it away. And the sea answers. And life at last makes sense. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if you got rich selling skewers, cars, software, or dreams. What matters is how you got there. Who you got there with. And what you left behind, not things, but affection, memory, soul. I'm not a millionaire. I'm a man who learned to grill meat with love. And discovered, in the slow fire of the barbecue, life's secret, that everything worth having takes time. Everything worth having hurts a little. And everything worth having leaves you wanting more. And that's why tomorrow I'll light the charcoal again. I'll season the meat. I'll call the grandkids. I'll serve my friends. I'll smile. I'll live. Because as long as there's fire in the barbecue, there'll be fire in the soul. And that, my friend, is priceless.